Task analysis of shampooing hair. The population for this activity is estimated individuals 6 years old and above who can independently wash their hair. The occupation is the activity of daily living of bathing. Activity demands are range of motion, muscle tone, sequencing, balance and coordination, cognitive awareness, and experience of self.
Internally rotate left shoulder. Flex right elbow. Internally rotate right shoulder. Flex fingers in a cylinder grasp to transfer shampoo bottle. Extend second digit of the right hand. Flex second digit to open the shampoo bottle. Supinate left forearm. Pronate right forearm and flex wrist. Pour shampoo. Supinate right forearm and extend wrist. Flex second digit to close shampoo bottle. Both left shoulder and right shoulder internally rotate to meet at midline. A main mover is the pectoralis major, innervated by the lateral and medial pectoral nerve. Right elbow moves from a neutral position to flexion by the biceps, innervated by the musculocutaneous nerve. Right MCPs flex and slightly abduct to grasp shampoo bottle from left hand by the anterior forearm muscle group, innervated by the median and ulnar nerve. The right ips, pips, dips are flexed by the intrinsic hand muscles, innervated by the median and ulnar nerve. The MCPs, ips, pips, and dips are in a cylinder grip. The right second MCP, dip, and pip move from extension to place finger on cap to flexion to open cap and back to extension by extensor digitorum, innervated by a radial nerve, and the flexor digitorum, innervated by the median nerve. The right forearm pronates, then supinates by the pronators, innervated by the median nerve, and the supinator, innervated by the radial nerve. The left forearm supinates by the supinator, innervated by the radial nerve. The right wrist flexes by the wrist flexors, innervated by the median and ulnar nerves.
The left ankle is plantar flexed with toe extension. The right ankle is slightly dorsiflexed. The left knee has slight flexion. The left hip is extended. The right hip is flexed with right knee extension. The right shoulder is flexed with elbow extension. The wrist has radial or ulnar deviation with extension, and the fingers will abduct and extend to release.
The movements of putting away the shampoo would be used in initially grabbing the shampoo as well. The left ankle is slightly plantar flexed by the posterior group innervated by the tibial nerve. The right ankle is slightly dorsiflexed by the anterior group innervated by the deep branch of the fibular nerve. Extension of the MTPs by the extensor digitorum longus innervated by the deep branch of the fibular nerve. The right knee is in full extension and is in a weight-bearing position by the quadriceps innervated by the femoral nerve. The left knee is slightly flexed and is non-weight bearing by the hamstrings innervated by the tibial branch of the sciatic nerve. The hip is in a lateral tilt with a slight anterior tilt of the hip. The left hip is extended by the gluteals innervated by the superior and inferior gluteal nerve. The right hip is flexed when taking a step, and the end result is in neutral weight bearing by the psoas major innervated by the lumbar plexus and the iliacus innervated by the femoral nerve. The right shoulder is flexed by the deltoid anterior fibers innervated by the axillary nerve. The right elbow is extended to raise the arm above the head to reach for the shampoo by the triceps brachii innervated by the radial nerve. The left arm remains resting against the body. Abduction and upward rotation of the scapula by the serratus anterior innervated by the long thoracic and medial pectoral nerve, and the trapezius upper and lower fibers innervated by the long thoracic.
The right wrist is in slight ulnar deviation and extension for optimal gripping position by the extensor carpi ulnaris innervated by the radial nerve and the extensor carpi radialis longus innervated by the radial nerve. The type of grip used is the cylinder grip. All the MCPs by the anterior forearm group and the IPS, PIPS, DIPS by the intrinsic hand muscles are in flexion, MCPs slight abduction, innervated by the ulnar and medial nerve. Extend the MCPs, IPS, PIPS, and DIPS out of flexion, MCPs slight abduction to release. Posterior forearm group innervated by the ulnar and radial nerve.
The right and left ankle are in neutral. The right knee and left knee are in extension. The right knee was extended and it flexed back to extension. The right and left hip are in neutral. The right hip was in flexion and extended back to neutral. The right shoulder was flexed. Now is it extended and it's adducted and downwardly rotated.
The movements of returning to midline would also be used initially after grabbing the shampoo. The ankles are in a neutral weight-bearing position. The right knee moved from extension to flexion back to extension by the quadriceps innervated by the femoral nerve and the hamstrings innervated by the tibial nerve. The left knee moves into extension and becomes weight-bearing by the quadriceps innervated by the femoral nerve. The right hip was flexed, further flexes to flex the knee and extends to a neutral position by the quadriceps innervated by the femoral nerve and the hamstrings and gluteals innervated by the tibial and superior and inferior gluteals. The left hip was extended and it flexes to come back to neutral by the hip flexors innervated by the femoral nerve. The right shoulder was flexed and it extends to come back to the body by the posterior deltoid innervated by the axillary nerve. The right scapula adducts and downwardly rotates by the major and minor rhomboids innervated by the dorsal scapular nerve. The right elbow was extended and it flexes to come back to the body by the elbow flexors innervated by the musculocutaneous nerve. The right wrist is in radial deviation by the flexor carpi radialis longus and extensor carpi radialis longus and brevis innervated by the radiant and median nerve.
Right wrist will supinate, elbows will remain in flexion, shoulders will externally rotate and flex to bring shampoo to hair. Scapula abducts and upwardly rotates. The wrist will alternate between ulnar and radial deviation, and the fingers will alternate between flexion and extension.
Bringing shampoo to hair. The right wrist will supinate by the supinator innervated by the radial nerve. The right and left elbows remain in flexion by the elbow flexors innervated by the musculocutaneous nerve. The shoulders will externally rotate and flex, bringing the shampoo to hair by the deltoid, innervated by the axillary nerve, and the scapula abducts and upwardly rotates by the serratus anterior, which is innervated by the long thoracic, and the trapezius upper and lower fibers, innervated by the long thoracic nerve. Wrist will alternate between ulnar and radial deviation to scrub shampoo and hair by the extensor carpi ulnaris and flexor carpi ulnaris, innervated by the radial and ulnar nerve, and the extensor carpi radialis longus and brevis, and flexor carpi radialis longus, innervated by the radial and median nerve. MCPs, IPS, PIPS, and DIPS alternate between extension and flexion to scrub shampoo and hair by the extensor digitorum, innervated by the radial, and the flexor digitorum, innervated by the median nerve.
The scapula adducts and downwardly rotates. The shoulder extends, the elbow extends, and then to rinse hair, the cervical spine will extend.
When returning to a neutral position after washing the hair, the scapula adducts and downwardly rotates by the major and minor rhomboids innervated by the dorsal scapular nerve. Extensions of the shoulders will occur by the posterior deltoid innervated by the axillary nerve. Extension of the elbows by the triceps brachii and innervated by the radial nerve. And then extension of the cervical spine vertebrae to place hair in water. This is done by the upper fibers of the trapezius innervated by the axillary nerve.